This island is smaller than New York City. Yet today, it stands among the richest places on Earth. In a single lifetime, Singapore transformed from a poor, resource-starved port to a global financial powerhouse, with living standards that rank with the very best in the world. How did it happen? What decisions, what mindset, and what strategy turned near-certain failure into an economic miracle? In 1965, Singapore was cast out of a union it thought would secure its future. Malaysia withdrew. The world doubted Singapore's survival. There was no oil, no gold, almost no land for farming, and an economy with high unemployment and low industrial capacity. The island's basic water supply depended on pipes from across the border. It looked like a country designed to fail. But leadership matters. Vision matters. And execution matters most of all. The story of Singapore is the story of decisions made under pressure, decisions about people, rules, education, and capital. It is a blueprint that other nations study and many individuals can learn from. Let's start at the beginning. When Singapore became independent in 1965, it was not a celebration, it was fear. Independence arrived as a forced separation, and the nation was suddenly on its own. The challenges were immediate, jobs were scarce, housing was overcrowded and unsafe, racial tensions were real, and there was no obvious path to prosperity. The island needed work. It needed credibility. It needed a plan. Lee Kuan Yew and a small team of ministers answered with clarity. If Singapore had no natural resources, it would develop the one resource that compounds forever, its people. The doctrine was simple but strict: discipline, education, meritocracy, and clean government. If the country could be trusted, global capital would trust it. If the workforce was skilled, global companies would hire it. If the rules were clear and consistently enforced, the economy could grow on a foundation that didn't crack. The first moves were not glamorous. They were practical. Industrial estates like Jurong were carved out of swamp and scrubbed to create jobs, initially labor-intensive and low-margin, but jobs that taught skills and created exports. At the same time, Singapore leaned into its geography. Sitting on the world's most important shipping lanes, it professionalized its port, cut red tape, and turned a historical accident, its location, into a strategic advantage. But infrastructure alone doesn't create prosperity. Trust does. Singapore built institutions that foreign investors could depend on, a professional civil service, reliable courts, and a government that was seen as incorruptible. Corporate taxes were kept competitive, a flat 17% headline rate, and the rulebook was deliberately simple, with targeted exemptions to attract startups and multinationals alike. Education became a national mission. Children studied hard subjects with global value, mathematics, science, and English, so they could work anywhere in the world, and the world could come work with them. Technical institutes and polytechnics supplied industry with the talent it actually needed. The country didn't just send students to university, it matched skills to strategy. Public housing was treated as economic policy, not just social policy. The state built at scale through the Housing and Development Board so that families could own a stake in the country's success. Over time, home ownership exceeded 90%, one of the highest rates in the world, anchoring social stability and giving ordinary people a balance sheet that grew with the nation. As the 1970s moved into the 1980s, the plan evolved. Once basic jobs and credibility were secured, Singapore began moving up the value chain, from garments and ship repair to electronics, pharmaceuticals, and precision engineering. Policymakers constantly asked a hard question: what can the world buy from us that's hard to copy and pays better wages? The answer kept changing, and Singapore kept changing with it. Finance was the next leap. With strong institutions and a reputation for order, the island positioned itself as a safe, well-regulated hub for capital in Asia. Banks and asset managers found a home where contracts were honored, laws were clear, and macroeconomic policy was steady. Over decades, that trust turned into numbers. By 2024, nominal GDP reached roughly $548 billion, and GDP per capita around $90,700, placing Singapore among the world's leaders. The labor market tells you what kind of economy you've built. In normal times, Singapore's unemployment rate sits near the floor for advanced economies, around 2% in 2024, low by international standards and consistent with a system that prioritizes employability and steady demand for skills. Population policy also reflects strategy. Singapore stayed open to global talent while investing in its own citizens, balancing pressures on housing and services with the need for growth. As of June 2025, total population stood at about 6.11 million, up from about 6.04 million a year earlier, growth driven in part by non-resident workers and professionals who keep the economy dynamic. If you want to understand the engine under the hood, look at governance. Corruption is a tax on hope. Singapore cut that tax to near zero by paying public servants competitive wages, enforcing rules without fear or favor, and creating a culture where clean government was the norm, not the exception. Companies valued predictability. Households valued safety. Ambitious people valued a system where effort paid off. Of course, success brings new questions. With wealth, gaps can widen. With order, debate can narrow. With openness, housing and cost of living can strain. Singapore has never been immune to criticism, about inequality, about political space, about how much control is too much. Serious countries take such questions seriously. Singapore's answer has been to adapt, adjusting housing policies, upgrading skills, and steadily refining social support, while keeping the core logic intact: be trusted, be connected, be useful to the world. So what are the strategies beneath the headlines, the repeatable ideas any nation, company, or individual can study? First, build institutions before you need them. Singapore created a legal and administrative backbone that could carry heavy weight long before the economy grew big. When opportunity arrived, the system didn't break, it scaled. Second, obsess over human capital. Land can be scarce, brains are infinite. The curriculum, the technical schools, the relentless focus on English and STEM were deliberate choices that multiplied every other policy. Third, specialize, then climb. Start where you can, labor-intensive industries if necessary, but always plan the next rung: electronics, biotech, finance, green services. The economy is a ladder, development is the act of climbing it on purpose. Fourth, price stability and policy credibility. Singapore's unusual framework, managing the currency against a basket to contain imported inflation, helped keep the investment climate calm. Investors bet not on today's rate but on tomorrow's predictability. Fifth, be the easiest place to do business. Keep taxes competitive. The 17% corporate rate is simple and globally credible, and make the rules fast to navigate. The world is complicated, winning countries are simple to work with. Sixth, turn housing into nation building. When most families own their home, social stability improves, savings accumulate, and the political economy supports long-term planning. A home ownership rate above 90% is not just a statistic, it's social architecture. Seventh, stay open, but stay yourself. Singapore imported capital and talent without losing its standards. It enforced rules evenly, insisted on order, and invested in public goods, transport links, world-class airports and ports, parks and clean streets, that made the city not just efficient, but livable. Numbers give the story scale. But it's the mindset that gives it soul. Singapore behaves like a startup that never forgot it could die. It plans in decades, not news cycles. It sees crises, financial shocks, pandemics, trade wars, not as excuses, but as stress tests to learn from. That culture of seriousness is rare. And it compounds. Where does Singapore go next? The frontier will be services you can't touch, finance that's smarter and greener, logistics that are cleaner, technology that augments human capacity, education that never ends. Demographics will challenge growth. Geopolitics will test neutrality. Climate will demand reinvention. But the method, discipline, education, clean rules, and relentless adaptation, still works. For the rest of us, there are lessons we can apply today. If you're an entrepreneur, build trust first. Make your business the easiest partner to work with. Keep your promises. Systems beat slogans. If you're a student or a parent, invest in skills the world pays for. Learn the language of commerce and code. Be bilingual in ambition and humility. If you're a policymaker, pick a few priorities and do them very well. Pay your regulators enough to be incorruptible. Publish the rules, then enforce them equally. And if you're simply someone trying to build a better life, remember what Singapore proved, that people, not land, define a nation's wealth. Your future is not what you inherit, it's what you build. In 1965, the world looked at Singapore and said, it will never survive. In 2025, the world looks at Singapore and asks, how did they do it so fast and so well? The answer is not magic. It is vision, executed with discipline, across decades. This is how Singapore became so rich. This is Trillies. If this video inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to Trillies. Like, share, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Together, we're building a world of vision, discipline, and success. This is Trillies, educating the world in financial and life success.